Hello, my name is Eric Follick. I'm a Platonist contemplative ascetic and renunciant. Uh, a little while back, I received an email inquiry from a young fellow who had seen my writings at platonistasceticism.blogspot.com. That's platonistasceticism.blogspot.com. And he was encouraged to embark on the renunciant life, and had a couple questions about beginning that, and I responded at some length to his inquiry, and which was apparently helpful to him. And so I wondered if the exchange might be of interest or value or help to anyone else out there who might be um, embarking or thinking on embarking on the contemplative ascetic way. So I thought I would make a video of the exchange for anyone who's interested or would rather see it in this format than read it. Again, it's at platonistasceticism.blogspot.com. Okay, so here we go. First, I'm going to read his question, and then or questions, and then I'll read my reply. So here's the inquiry that I received. I am an 18-year-old, nearly 19, soon to be renunciant and ascetic, hopefully, as it cannot be ignored that you cannot have the world and the great rewards of salvation and freedom. I found your blog in my investigation of Platonism, as it is a pure system where the majority of it, open parentheses, if not all of it completely, exclamation mark, close parentheses, uh, its teachings are true. Of course, as I am new to studying it, I have to keep researching and read all of Plato. Your blog has been extremely helpful in this effort, and the starting point of renunciation for any genuine spiritual practice is self-evidently true. How doing this reflects God, open parentheses, quote, the one, unquote, or, quote, the absolute, unquote, as you call him, close parentheses, you being me, what I say, is amazing. Though, to begin, although some things can be renounced immediately with ease, open parentheses, quote, don't read fiction books, apply yourself to spiritual text, unquote, and, quote, don't lust after sweets and don't eat meats, unquote, etc. I had a few questions about the whole process and your experience with it. The first is about how to begin the initial efforts and survive the fatigue when the excitement of a new, more proper life begins. I expect there to be failings and lapses, open parentheses, though it should be avoided at all costs, close parentheses. I see one method to possibly use is continued meditation on why you began this, escape from the world, and how perfect God is. How did you overcome this period? How would you recommend someone who has lived a very sedentary and, quote, pleasurable, unquote, life to do this? After a while, does it just become more natural? If so, how long is this? The second is about the temptation to return to the world and its ways if it arises. What methods do you have for overcoming this? Or is it after a while and true cognitive change has happened, temptation doesn't really happen, open parentheses, or is very weak, close parentheses? I hope that you can answer these, and again, I thank you for your blog and your efforts to spread this information. Okay, that's the inquiry that I received recently, and here is my reply, attempting hopefully to help out a little bit, as such as I can. So here's my answer. Thank you very much for reading and appreciating my writings. Of course, I greatly encourage and exhort you to retain your newfound understanding of the necessity of renunciation and asceticism, and to practice this for the remainder of this birth, and, indeed, for all future births until you attain liberation. Please stick to it no matter how difficult it may be in the present world, where there is so little, to say the least, appreciation, respect, and support for renunciation and true spiritual practice. I hope, as you kindly say, my writings may be of modest help in this regard. I began, or renewed, my spiritual practice in earnest in this birth when I was just your age 40 years ago. Not encountering any renunciants or real spiritual practitioners, not even the degree of guidance or encouragement that my writings might provide, I had to learn on my own by the, quote, school of hard knocks, unquote, and gradually come to understand the necessity of renunciation and move in that direction despite all the silly people around me discouraging it. It was by reading the records of the ancients, the primary source texts of, at that time, Buddhism, that I understood that the moderns are for the birds and that it was clearly necessary to follow the real path of the ancients and of all ascetic practitioners of all time, regardless of whether anyone else was or not. Thus, for example, it wasn't until 4 years later, at the age of 22, while I was living at a so-called Zen community in New York, which I long since repudiate as being completely fraudulent, corrupt, and silly, that I took my vow of celibacy on my own, though I had never actually not been celibate and was still virginal anyway. I had gradually become a most committed and ardent vegetarian by the time I turned 20. I had never been a drinker or party person and had always been of sort of naturally monastic and solitary temperament. I was, however, in my youth and when I was your age, what you have described in your email as, quote, one who has lived a very sedentary and, quote, pleasurable, unquote, life, unquote. I was and have always been not very tough physically and have always had much anxiety and was quite a, quote, wimp, as it were. I just kept gradually working and gently pushing myself and becoming more and more dedicated and ascetic and devoted as my understanding and devotion increased. Though, as I say, in various respects other than physical and emotional toughness, I was already naturally of monastic, ascetic, renunciant temperament. The most important thing is to have great sincerity and devotion and dedication and determination to attain release and be devoted to true spiritual practice and renunciation no matter what. And then just gradually and steadily work towards renouncing more and emulating the ideal. Be patient and steady and don't be dismayed by any lapses of the sort that you refer to that may occur. If you fall down, always just pick yourself right up and keep on going. You seem to show remarkable insight into how things could work, recognizing that after the initial excitement phase, the spiritual path is really a lot of hard, continuous work. The kind of meditation that you suggest is a good way to keep yourself going on the right track and also to overcome any temptation to return to the world, as you ask about in your second question. In regard to both your questions, yes, it does get easier and more natural as you go on, and you backslide even in thought less. The more disciplined you are, the easier and more natural discipline becomes. Once the cognitive shift has really been made and the aspiration for the way has really been awakened in the soul, there is less and less serious temptation to return to the world. In fact, the thought of doing so is horrifying and revolting. How long this will take in a particular individual case such as your own, I can't say. Everyone is different and has their own individual karma to deal with. But I can say that it will definitely become easier and more natural and inevitable over time, the more diligent and devoted you are within your capacities. Open parentheses, though again, go gradually without overreaching yourself too much if it becomes discouraging. Close parentheses. Also, some things are more difficult than others. For example, sexual desire is one of the very most difficult things to eradicate and deal with, and you can expect to struggle with it and have it around for many years, very many years to come, very many years. Of course, we don't act on it at all and don't really dream of doing so, even when thoughts and fantasies run off at length in that direction. But we still have to deal with it and be very careful about it. Perhaps more renunciants, especially now, have fallen because of women than anything else. Other things, though, also can be hard to leave, even such as if you are still living at home and your family has a television and you get drawn into watching it. A couple of concrete suggestions. It is very important, however much long struggle it may take, to establish a regular routine of going to bed early and getting up very early before dawn to spend time in meditation or contemplation practice. Being disciplined in different areas reinforce each other and make it all easier. A regular daily meditation or contemplation practice is the essence of the path and of great assistance in developing renunciation and asceticism. Indeed, is part and parcel with it. Read regularly and widely in the records and writings of the authentic great ascetics and renunciants of the past of the various systems. Much is available in English. This will be of great help and importance in gaining understanding, getting encouragement, and sticking to your devotion. I'm afraid that, except perhaps for myself, you are not very likely in this present age of darkness and this modern, brave new techno world to encounter any living examples to help you and provide support. So you need to take the renunciants of the past, open parentheses, and future and present, though just not visible, close parentheses, as your support. Quote, the communion of saints, quote, as the Catholics say. Vegetarianism, or ideally veganism, is of the greatest and most essential importance and not really very difficult at all, and can be implemented rapidly and will be of great help in supporting all your other efforts. Similarly, if it should go without saying that any alcohol or intoxicants or illicit drugs, not to say that I think you're doing any of that anyway, are to be immediately and permanently stopped. Even decent ordinary worldlings don't drink, and spiritual practice can't even be begun without teetotaling. And besides, you're legally underage for that anyway. If you can keep the, quote, big three, unquote, as that's my own term, celibacy, vegetarianism, and teetotaling, and keep a regular schedule of meditation contemplation practice, and be devoted to meditation contemplation practice, and spiritual and ascetic reading and study to the best of your ability, the rest will gradually fall into place. I hope this answers your inquiries somewhat. Again, be patient and diligent and work steadily, gradually, and devotedly to keep clearly in mind that there is no question that renunciation and asceticism and devotion to contemplative practice is the only way to go, and any alternative can't even be entertained. So there was my reply following upon the inquiry I read earlier. I hope that helped him and is helpful to anyone else who may see this. It's a little hard to have to tell people that they're basically going to have to do it on their own, but that's how it is in this present circumstances that we're in. And in fact, probably always, real practitioners have been few. And in a sense, you really always have to have gone it alone. But particularly now, it requires a lot of determination and fortitude. But it can be done. So anyway, I hope that again that that's helpful. And okay, thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.